Do you have a place where you can finally breathe? Not just sit down or rest, but really exhale, knowing no one will barge in, no one will ask what you're doing, no one will take up the space you carved out for yourself. For me, that place didn't come until much later in life. And when it did, I guarded it like my life depended on it. I grew up in a house where doors were more for decoration than boundaries. Privacy didn't exist. If I tried to lock my room, someone would be knocking within minutes, demanding answers, prying into things that weren't theirs to know. Over time, you stop fighting it. You stop asking for a space that belongs only to you. You learn to shrink. But deep down, the craving never goes away. So when I finally moved out, when I started earning enough to stand on my own, I made a promise to myself. One day, I'll have a place no one can touch. No uninvited footsteps, no voices bleeding through the walls, no judgment hanging in the air. Just me. That promise turned into a small penthouse in Brooklyn. Nothing flashy, nothing out of a glossy magazine, white walls, tall windows that caught the late sun. A balcony where I could stand barefoot and feel the pulse of the city rising from the streets below. It wasn't grand, but to me, it was everything. I still remember the first time I unlocked the door. The key was cold in my palm. The hallway smelled faintly of paint and dust. When I stepped inside, I heard only the echo of my own footsteps against bare floors. That sound, empty, hollow, pure, was freedom. For once, the silence belonged to me. I filled it slowly. A second-hand armchair that slouched a little to the left. A bookshelf that leaned but never toppled. Plants that seemed to grow twice as fast as anywhere else, as if they knew this was a safe place to thrive. Every corner whispered the same thing back at me. You belong here. Maybe it sounds silly, getting emotional over four walls and a few pieces of furniture. But if you've never had a space of your own, if you've always been told that your life was just an extension of someone else's decisions, then you know. Four walls can feel like salvation. That's why I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my siblings. Definitely not my in-laws, who love to preach that family shares everything. And for a while, not even my husband. It wasn't a lie. It was survival. Some things lose their magic the moment too many hands reach for them. And I wasn't ready to let that happen. Sometimes I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the lights flicker across the skyline. Down there, millions of people were rushing, colliding, living lives tangled with others. But up here, I could finally separate myself from the noise. It was like holding a secret no one else could touch. You see, sanctuary isn't about luxury. It's about dignity. It's about saying, this part of me, this slice of my life is mine. No one else gets to write their name on it. And that's what the penthouse became, my hidden sanctuary. My one true boundary in a world that had never respected them. It's funny how silence can bring back the loudest memories. I would sit in my penthouse, sipping tea while the city lights blinked below me, and out of nowhere, I'd hear echoes from my past. Not the real kind, no voices in the room, but the kind that lived inside my bones, doors slamming, someone storming down a hallway, questions I never wanted to answer. Growing up, privacy was a privilege I never had. I used to keep a small wooden box under my bed, nothing scandalous, just scraps that mattered to me. Ticket stubs from a movie I saw with a friend. Folded notes from school, a photo of me at a carnival. One afternoon, I came home and found everything laid out on the kitchen table. My mother's voice cut sharper than any knife. "Why are you hiding these from me?" I was 15, old enough to crave my own space. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't allowed one. That day taught me that nothing I owned, not even my thoughts, was truly mine. Those memories came rushing back whenever I looked at the walls of my penthouse. They should have felt strong, like armor, but instead they felt fragile, like glass. I knew what it meant to have something worth protecting, and I knew how quickly it could be taken away. Marriage only made the cracks wider. Nathan was kind, steady, and patient, but even he couldn't understand why I clutched at my boundaries so fiercely. He'd ask innocent questions. Why didn't you tell me you were here this weekend? Or, why keep this place just for yourself? I never had an easy answer. How do you explain to someone that giving too much feels like losing yourself? That you've lived so long under other people's eyes that solitude feels like air, and without it, you choke? Sometimes at night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling fan. In the quiet, I'd hear voices from years ago. What are you hiding? Why do you need to be alone? They weren't in the room, but they were inside me. That's the thing about old wounds. They don't close just because you move into a new space. They live in your head, replaying over and over until you almost believe them. The penthouse was supposed to silence those voices. Instead, it made them louder. The more I loved the place, the more I feared losing it. I started carrying the keys like talismans. I'd double-check the locks before leaving, sometimes circling back halfway down the block just to be sure. Neighbors probably thought I was paranoid. Maybe I was. But when you've lived without boundaries, you know how easily people can step over them. And my family? They had a way of testing lines, of pressing until something gave. Phone calls that started with casual chatter would turn into prying questions. Why don't you bring us over sometime? What are you hiding from us? I laughed it off, but inside I felt the cracks widening. They didn't know about the penthouse yet, but I could feel the storm brewing. It was only a matter of time before curiosity or entitlement pulled them straight to my door. I tried to convince myself I was safe, that the locks were enough, that Nathan's loyalty was enough, that secrecy was enough. But every secret has weight, and mine was getting heavier. Do you know that feeling? When you finally hold the one thing you've dreamed of, and instead of relaxing, you start looking over your shoulder. That's what the penthouse had become. Not just a sanctuary, but a secret too fragile to last. And I was right, because cracks, once they appear, only grow deeper. It started with a phone call. Ordinary, almost forgettable. My best friend's voice on the line, tight with confusion. Hey, are you throwing a party tonight? I laughed. A party? At my place? You know me better than that. There was a pause, then a sigh that made my stomach drop. Olivia, I just saw it on Instagram. Your penthouse, your balcony. People are tagging the location. Quote, my chest went cold. I pulled the phone away, stared at the screen like it might change what I'd heard. My sanctuary, the one place I thought untouchable, was splashed across social media. I opened the app, hands shaking, and there it was, my living room, flooded with people. My white walls buried behind balloons and cheap decorations. My bookshelf leaned under the weight of drinks and handbags. Even my plants were shoved into corners, trampled like they didn't belong. Laughter, music, glasses clinking. It was all there, tagged, posted, and shared. I couldn't breathe. I called Nathan. My voice cracked before I even finished his name. Did you tell them? His confusion was immediate. Tell who? What are you talking about? I sent him the link. Silence stretched, long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then he cursed, low and sharp. I swear, Olivia, I had no idea. I wanted to believe him, but all I could see were strangers and family in the space I'd built, touching everything, laughing like it belonged to them. Nathan didn't wait. I'm going over there right now, he said, already grabbing his keys. I stayed glued to my phone, refreshing the feed as the nightmare unfolded in real time. My sister clinking glasses with cousins. My mother-in-law posing near the balcony, captioning it, "Family always comes first." My father sitting in my armchair, the one I bought on a rainy Saturday with money I saved, looking as if it was his throne. It was more than trespassing. It was invasion. I felt stripped, exposed, violated in a way I didn't know how to put into words. Nathan arrived before I could move. I could picture the scene as he walked in, the music faltering, the voices stumbling, faces snapping toward him in surprise. He told me later the room went silent when he shouted, "What the hell are you doing here?" My mother-in-law tried to laugh it off. "Relax, Nathan. It's family. Family shares everything." That line cut deeper than anything else, because it was the same belief I'd been fighting my whole life, that family means entitlement, that love gives permission to break boundaries, that your body, your time, your space are never really yours. Nathan didn't let it slide. He pointed to the door. "Out now!" Some left without looking back. Others argued, voices rising. My sister scoffed. "It's not a big deal. She doesn't even use this place that much." But Nathan didn't waver. He made them leave one by one until the party drained out into the hallway. When he called me afterward, I could still hear the echo of slammed doors. "It's a mess, Olivia." They've trashed everything. I didn't cry. Not right then. I just sat there, phone in my lap, staring at my reflection in the dark window. How could a place that once felt like salvation now feel tainted? How could four walls that promised peace now echo with betrayal? Sanctuaries aren't supposed to have fingerprints from people who never asked permission. That night, I realized something I'd never wanted to admit. Once people cross your boundaries, they don't retreat on their own. You have to push them out, and even then the damage doesn't vanish. The invasion wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was proof that the cracks in my facade had been real all along, and now they had burst wide open. When I finally walked back into the penthouse, the air was wrong, heavy, stale, like a stranger's breath had filled every corner. My sanctuary smelled of spilled liquor and cheap perfume. The floor was sticky under my shoes. Balloons sagged against the ceiling, some half deflated, others tangled in the light fixtures. I froze at the door, gripping the handle so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was supposed to be the place I trusted, the one place that carried no ghosts from my childhood, and now every inch of it screamed betrayal. Nathan was already there, pacing. His face was tight, his jaw locked. "You should see the bedroom," he muttered, voice low. I didn't want to, but I had to. The bed I had carefully made, the one with clean sheets and pillows I chose after weeks of searching, was unrecognizable. The covers were rumpled, stained with wine. Someone's makeup had smudged across the pillowcase. Drawers half open, clothes pulled out and tossed on the floor. A place meant for rest had been turned into a spectacle. That's when something inside me snapped. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice replaying in my head, mocking, "Family shares everything." My sister's scoff, "It's not a big deal." The words clung to me like old chains from my teenage years. Suddenly, I was 15 again, standing over that wooden box my mother had shown, feeling vulnerable and small while everyone acted like it was harmless. I closed the drawer firmly. The sound echoed sharp, bouncing off the walls. "No more," I whispered, though my voice shook. Nathan looked at me, surprised. "Olivia!" "No more," I said louder, the words growing steadier, harder. "They don't get to do this again, ever." It wasn't just anger, it was grief. Grief for the sanctuary I thought I had. Grief for the girl who never got to keep anything safe. Grief for the trust I placed in people who didn't deserve it. The next day, I called my family one by one. My mother answered first. Her tone was casual, as if nothing had happened. "Olivia, darling, it was just a little gathering." "Don't be so dramatic." My voice tightened. "You broke into my home, you trashed it. That's not a gathering, it's trespassing. She laughed, brittle and dismissive. Don't exaggerate. It's family. That word again, family. As if it excused everything. I hung up before she could say more. My sister wasn't any better. Why are you making this a war? It's just an apartment. You act like you're above us now. I felt my hands tremble, but not from fear anymore. I'm not above anyone. I'm just finally choosing myself. You don't get to decide what's mine. Even my father tried smoothing things over. Don't let this tear us apart. We were just celebrating togetherness. But togetherness built on disrespect isn't love, it's control. By the end of those calls, my chest ached, my throat raw. But there was clarity too. For the first time, I had said the words I'd swallowed for years. I wasn't going to let their definitions of family erase my boundaries anymore. Nathan stood beside me through all of it. He didn't try to fix the conversations. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just listened, jaw tight, eyes steady. When the last call ended, he wrapped his hand around mine. They don't get to come back here, he said firmly. That night I sat alone on the balcony. The city hummed below me, unchanged. Cabs honked, sirens wailed, laughter spilled from sidewalks. Life outside moved on, but inside I felt the shift. This was my breaking point. The moment I knew I couldn't go back to pretending. I couldn't keep patching cracks and hoping they wouldn't split open. Boundaries don't protect themselves. You either defend them or you watch them collapse. And I was done collapsing. I thought the storm had already passed. The shouting. The trashed apartment. The endless phone calls where I told my family to stay away. I believed that was the worst of it, but I was wrong. The storm hadn't ended. It had only shifted. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when it hit me again. I was at work, sipping lukewarm coffee, flipping through emails that all blurred together. My coworker leaned over, her expression caught somewhere between gossip and pity. "Olivia," she whispered, "I think you should see this." She slid her phone toward me. On the screen, my world cracked open all over again. It was my penthouse, my sanctuary. Except it wasn't mine anymore. It was content. A video, grainy but unmistakable, of my living room stuffed with people. Music rattled the windows. Balloons bobbed in corners. My balcony, the one where I once stood barefoot at dusk, was crowded with bodies holding up glasses. They were laughing, cheering, spilling drinks. My armchair, the one I chose on a rainy afternoon, was a throne for someone else. And my sister's voice, unmistakable, narrated over the chaos. In the corner of the screen, a red tag blinked. Live. Thousands of viewers. Comments flying up faster than I could read. Whose place is this? That apartment is insane. Imagine being rich enough to waste space like that. I gripped the phone so tightly my hand hurt. My chest burned like fire pressed against my ribs. I pushed it back across the desk, muttering, "That's not possible." But it was. I called Nathan immediately, stumbling over my words. "It's online. They filmed it. Everyone can see it. Wah!" He swore, his voice raw with anger. "Send me the link now." I did. Then I sat at my desk, staring at the screen while the comments kept pouring in. My sanctuary had been stripped bare, dissected by strangers, judged by people who didn't even know my name. By the time Nathan got home that night, the damage had spread like wildfire. The live stream had been saved, reposted, cut into clips. A gossip page picked it up, plastered headlines over it, "Inside a secret Brooklyn penthouse party." They speculated about who owned it, hinted at scandal, twisted it into something bigger than reality. My name wasn't in the article, but the walls were mine. The balcony was mine. Anyone who knew me would know. Nathan's jaw was stone when he walked in. "I found out who posted it," he said, holding his phone like a weapon. "It was your sister. She streamed it. And then—" He paused, eyes dark. "She sold the footage to a tabloid for cash." The world tilted beneath me. I had prepared myself for betrayal, but not for this. Not for a price tag stamped across my life. When I confronted her, my voice shook. "You sold my home, my sanctuary. Do you even understand what you've done?" Her reply cut colder than any blade. "It's just a video, Olivia. Everyone shares everything these days. Stop being so uptight. Just a video." As if it hadn't gutted me. As if the 4 walls I fought for my whole life weren't worth more than her handful of dollars. I searched her face, looking for the sister I thought I knew. But all I saw was entitlement, smug and unashamed. That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't the collapse they expected. It wasn't begging or silence. It was clarity. The twist wasn't theirs. It was mine. I stopped asking. I started demanding. I called a lawyer. My hands trembled as I explained, but my voice didn't falter. Notices were drafted. Takedown requests sent. Letters warning of legal consequences landed in inboxes and mailboxes. I wasn't whispering anymore. I was drawing a line in ink. Nathan stood with me, unwavering. "You don't have to let them walk over you anymore," he told me again and again. And for the first time, I believed him. The backlash from family was swift. Calls buzzing nonstop. Accusations sharp as knives. "How could you do this to us? You're choosing outsiders over blood. It's just an apartment." But I had finally learned the truth. Defending your boundaries will always look like betrayal to those who profit from breaking them. I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, signing documents that declared, "This is mine. You don't get to take it. You don't get to sell it. You don't get to rewrite it." Was I scared? Absolutely. But fear wasn't the point anymore. The point was dignity. The point was choosing myself, after years of shrinking and yielding and pretending I didn't need to. That was the twist. After believing I had to choose between love and autonomy, I realized I could stand on my own. And I wasn't selfish for doing it. I was surviving. I was finally living. The day after the letters went out, I woke to a storm. Not the kind that rattles windows or floods streets, but one that filled every corner of my phone. Notifications stacked like falling bricks, buzzing so violently the nightstand trembled. When I finally picked it up, the screen glowed with anger, missed calls, unread texts, voicemails one after another. My family had turned into a mob, and I was their target. The words blurred together, but the venom was the same. "You humiliated us. No one cares about your little apartment. You've forgotten where you come from." And the cruelest, "How dare you drag lawyers into family business?" That one was from my mother. No greeting, no tenderness, just a dagger straight to the heart. I waited for a message from my sister, the one who filmed, streamed, and sold my sanctuary, but she said nothing. Her silence cut sharper than every insult combined. Silence is its own weapon, and she knew how to wield it. Nathan poured coffee and set it by my hand. The steam curled upward, carrying a faint comfort. "You don't have to look at those," he said softly. But I shook my head. "I do." Because every line, every jab was proof of why I'd taken this stand. If I doubted myself, their words reminded me. They never saw me as a person with boundaries, only as a resource to exploit. I looked around my penthouse. Clean again, yes. The wine scrubbed out of the carpet. The decorations ripped down. The sheets washed. The air freshened. On the surface, it was fixed. But sanctuaries don't heal with soap and water. They scar. The bookshelf still carried the ghost of all those glasses balanced on its edges. The balcony whispered of strangers' laughter. My bed, no matter how fresh the linen, would never forget the smudge of makeup on its pillow. This place was mine again, but it would never be untouched. The legal battle became my new life. Days bled into nights of reading contracts, signing papers, meeting with the lawyer who assured me, again and again, that I had a case. We drafted takedown notices, filed complaints, threatened lawsuits. Every letter sent was a stitch in the fabric of my dignity. It was slow, tedious, draining, but it worked. One by one, the videos vanished. First from social feeds, then from gossip sites. Even the boldest tabloid buckled under the pressure of potential litigation. I watched the links break, the posts disappear, the comments dry up like puddles under the sun. The first night I searched and found nothing. I cried. Not because the war was over, but because for once, I wasn't powerless. For once, I could push back. But victories come with costs. The family fractures deepened, invitations stopped. Group chats silenced me or mocked me if I dared to speak. At gatherings, eyes avoided mine or glared with judgment. My cousins whispered behind hands. My mother, when she finally broke weeks of silence, spat words that seared, "You've changed. You think you're better than us now?" She was right about one thing. I had changed. I wasn't the girl who swallowed her voice to keep peace. I wasn't the woman who bent so others could stand taller. I was someone who finally believed her boundaries mattered. One evening, I stood on the balcony, the city sprawling beneath me, glowing and restless. Nathan joined me, leaning on the railing beside mine. His voice was quiet, but certain. "You know, it may never go back to how it was." I nodded, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Maybe it's not supposed to." Because I realized something that night. What I thought was closeness had been control. What I mistook for care had been entitlement. And what they called love, it was possession. Love without respect is just chains with a prettier name. The aftermath wasn't neat. It was jagged, messy, lonely. There were nights I cried, missing the idea of family even though the reality had always hurt me. There were mornings I woke with doubt gnawing at my ribs, but clarity grew louder than the doubt. Clarity that told me, sometimes things have to break so you can see their true shape. Sometimes harmony is just silence dressed up as peace. And sometimes losing family is the only way to finally find yourself. Yes, I lost people, but I gained something bigger. I gained the space to breathe without apology. The right to say this is mine and have it respected. The power to choose myself, even when others called it betrayal. The penthouse still bore scars, so did I. But scars aren't weakness. They're proof you survived what tried to erase you. And as I stood there that night, watching the city flicker with life, I understood. Freedom isn't about being untouched. It's about being whole, even with cracks, even with pain, even with loss. I had lost the illusion of family, but I had gained myself, and that was enough. For a long time, I thought closure would come from them. From my mother softening her voice one day and saying, "We were wrong." From my sister showing up at my door with an apology and the money she had made off my life. From my family sitting around a table, finally seeing me as more than someone to use. I waited years for that version of closure, convincing myself it might still arrive if I was patient enough, but waiting only chained me to the same people who broke me. Closure, I realized, was never theirs to give. It was mine to claim. It began with my space. I walked through the penthouse one morning with a trash bag and a hammer, determined to erase the shadows. Every leftover balloon, every stain on the wall, every item that tied me to that invasion, I ripped it out. I even got rid of the armchair I once adored, because I could no longer look at it without seeing my father lounging there like he owned it. When I replaced it with something new, I felt the air shift. My home wasn't a crime scene anymore. It was alive again. The second step was my voice. One night, sitting across from Nathan, I finally said out loud what I had been circling around for weeks. "They're not welcome here anymore. Not ever." My chest tightened as I spoke, but then it loosened, as if something unlatched inside me. Nathan didn't argue. He just nodded, his hand closing over mine. "Good," he said. "They don't deserve it." But closure isn't a single act. It's 1,000 small choices you make afterward. Some mornings I woke up with doubt gnawing at me. I'd scroll through old photos, family birthdays, laughter frozen midair, and wonder if I had been too harsh. But then the memory of strangers watching my sanctuary online, commenting on my life as if it were theirs to consume, would come crashing back. And that reminder steeled me. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. My family never gave me what I thought I needed. Instead, they doubled down, whispers at gatherings, cousins avoiding my eyes, my mother's silences stretching into months. But in their absence, I discovered something surprising. Peace. I filled that silence with new rituals. Sunday mornings on the balcony with coffee, evenings journaling under lamplight, pouring every thought onto paper. Long walks with Nathan through the city, talking not about family drama, but about dreams we hadn't voiced before. My life grew quieter, but also more honest. And then one night, it hit me. I was standing on the balcony, notebook in hand, writing about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. The skyline glittered in front of me, steady and vast. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Closure wasn't about repairing what was broken. It was about accepting that some things are meant to stay broken. Closure was realizing that distance doesn't mean failure. It means healing. Closure was giving myself permission to stop waiting for their permission. The penthouse carries scars, yes, but so do I. And those scars don't diminish me. They remind me I survived. They remind me I chose myself when no one else did. If you're listening to this, maybe you know the weight of being told you owe everything, that saying no makes you ungrateful. Hear me clearly. You are allowed to keep something for yourself. You are allowed to draw a line and stand by it. You are allowed to walk away. Closure isn't waiting for them to change. Closure is deciding you don't need them to. I never got the apology. I never got the understanding, but I got something better, peace. And for the first time, peace was enough. Silence has a sound. You might think it doesn't, but it does. It's the hum of the refrigerator at 3 a.m, the creak of wood when no one's walking across it, the echo of your own heartbeat when you're lying awake, listening for footsteps that never come. After the chaos, after the invasion, after the shouting and the legal letters and the storm of angry calls, silence arrived like an uninvited guest. At first, I thought it was peace. No buzzing phone, no relatives pounding at my door. No one telling me what I owed. Just me, Nathan, and these walls I fought so hard to protect. But silence, when it stretches long enough, begins to feel heavy. I'd wake up to sunlight spilling through the tall windows, the kind of light that once made me feel free. I'd brew coffee, listening to the hiss and drip, waiting for the comfort of a message that never came. My family had gone quiet, too quiet. And in that quiet, the weight of everything I'd lost pressed down harder than any of their insults ever had. I started noticing things. The absence of my mother's voice on Sunday mornings, when she used to call just to criticize my cooking or ask about money. The way my sister's name no longer flashed on my screen, even if only to argue. The lack of chatter in family group threads, where my silence was now permanent exile. It was freedom, yes. But it was also loneliness. I would sit on the balcony at night, staring at the skyline, and remember being a child again. The house I grew up in was crowded, always loud, arguments bleeding through walls, doors slamming. Yet even then, there were moments, tiny, fragile moments, when warmth slipped through the cracks. My father reading the paper while I sat at his feet. My mother humming absent-mindedly while she cooked. My sister and I whispering secrets under the covers before sleep. Those memories ambushed me in the quiet. They played like old film reels, scratched at the edges but still vivid. They reminded me of what I had once hoped family could be, and that made the silence harder to bear. One afternoon, While sorting through old papers, I found a letter. An envelope with my mother's handwriting on it, tucked between bills and junk mail. The postmark was weeks old, from right after everything unraveled. I held it in my hands, staring at the familiar loops of her script. My heart thudded. I didn't open it. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I already knew. Whether it was filled with guilt-tripping, denial, or one last attempt to pull me back under their control, it wouldn't give me what I wanted. It wouldn't heal me. So I slid it into a drawer and left it unopened, a reminder that some answers aren't worth chasing. Nathan noticed my moods, though I tried to hide them. One evening, he found me sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by photo albums I hadn't touched in years. Pictures of birthdays, Christmases, vacations that looked happy in still frames. He sat beside me, his arm brushing mine. "You miss them," he said quietly. I swallowed. "I miss what I thought we were." We flipped through the pages together in silence. Smiling faces, cake crumbs, candlelight. The illusion of closeness captured in snapshots. It was strange, realizing how photographs could lie. Not about the smiles, but about what came before and after the click of the camera. Nathan finally closed the album and set it aside. "You're not wrong to grieve," he told me, "but grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means you're human." His words stayed with me. They softened the edges of the silence. They reminded me that loneliness wasn't proof I had failed. It was part of the price of reclaiming myself. Days passed, weeks. The silence didn't disappear, but it changed. It stopped sounding like emptiness and started sounding like space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to fill with something new. Still, every so often, I'd hear echoes. Not real ones, just the kind that live inside you. My mother's voice telling me I owed her everything. My sister's scoff, dismissing my boundaries as selfishness. The voices would rise in the quiet, and I'd have to remind myself, they're not here anymore. They can't reach me unless I let them. The echoes of silence taught me something I never expected, that peace isn't loud. It doesn't cheer or clap. Peace hums quietly, waiting for you to notice it. And once you do, you realize it's been there all along, beneath the chaos, patient and steady. So yes, silence has a sound. And it's not absence, it's presence. It's the proof that I survived the noise, that I created a space where their voices no longer rule. And maybe, just maybe, it was the sound I had been chasing my whole life. After the silence settled, I knew I couldn't just live inside the absence. You can't build a life on what's missing. At some point, you have to fill the empty rooms with something of your own choosing. That's when I realized it wasn't just about defending boundaries anymore. It was about creating a new version of myself inside those walls. The first step was small: plants. I went to a nursery on the edge of Brooklyn, the kind of place where the air smells like damp soil and the light filters through rows of green. I filled a cart with ferns, succulents, a fiddle-leaf fig that brushed the top of my head. Carrying them into the penthouse felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. Each pot I placed on a shelf, each leaf catching the sun. It was proof I could make this place mine again. Not theirs, not shared, mine. Then came the furniture. I replaced what had been ruined, yes, but I also allowed myself indulgences. A velvet chair in a shade of emerald I'd never dared to choose before, a rug that felt soft under my feet, a desk by the window where I began writing again. It wasn't about erasing what happened, it was about rewriting the story the space told. Nathan noticed the changes too. One evening he walked in and smiled. "It feels different here," he said, dropping his bag. "Different good?" I asked, unsure. "Different you," he replied. And that mattered more than anything. Rebuilding wasn't only about the penthouse, it was about me. I signed up for a pottery class, my hands shaping clay that spun beneath the wheel. At first, the pieces cracked, collapsed, broke apart, but each failure felt like practice and patience. Slowly, bowls began to hold their shape. Mugs curved under my fingers. I brought them home, lined them on shelves. Imperfect, lopsided, but mine. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while drowning in family obligations. I invited them over, carefully, with conditions I had never dared voice before. "Come for dinner," I told them, "but this is my space. Shoes off at the door, no surprises, no bringing others without asking." They respected it. And when I saw them laughing in my kitchen, plates piled with food, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe connection. Proof that boundaries don't kill intimacy, they protect it. One night, after everyone left, I sat on the couch with Nathan. The city hummed outside, quiet inside. He handed me a cup of tea in one of my uneven mugs. "You know," he said, "family isn't just where you come from, it's what you build." I nodded, sipping slowly. His words sank deep. For so long, I thought family was fixed, something you were stuck with, no matter how much it hurt. But here, surrounded by plants I chose, furniture I loved, friends who respected me, and a man who stood beside me, it finally clicked. Family wasn't blood. Family was choice. The rebuilding wasn't glamorous. Some nights I still woke up uneasy, haunted by memories. Sometimes I still flinched when my phone buzzed, expecting another storm. But with every step, every plant, every piece of clay, every boundary respected, I felt myself returning. Stronger, clearer, whole. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. For months, the word family felt poisoned. It clung to me like smoke, burning my throat whenever I tried to speak it. Every memory of my mother's dismissive tone, my sister's betrayal, my relatives' accusations, those echoes had rewritten the meaning of the word. Family, to me, was no longer comfort. It was intrusion. It was chains. But slowly, almost without noticing, that meaning began to shift. It happened on an ordinary Friday evening. Nathan and I had invited a few friends over, 2 of my coworkers, a neighbor I'd grown close to, and my best friend who had called me the night of the invasion. I cooked, nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread. The smell filled the penthouse, buttery and warm. Music played low in the background. When they arrived, they slipped off their shoes without being asked. They laughed easily, moved carefully, treated my home as if it mattered. We ate at the table I once thought was ruined. Conversation flowed about work stress, weekend plans, small joys. No one pried into wounds I wasn't ready to share. No one demanded more than I wanted to give. As I watched them, I realized something startling. This, right here, looked more like family than anything I'd had before. Family wasn't supposed to be about blood. It was supposed to be about respect, about choice, about love that didn't come with conditions. Later that night, after everyone left, Nathan and I sat on the balcony. The city sparkled below, endless and alive. He looked at me with that steady calm I had come to lean on. "You know," he said, "you didn't lose family. You just redefined it." The words settled deep. They reminded me of something I had refused to face. I wasn't empty. I wasn't alone. I had built something new, something real. A week later, while cleaning out a drawer, I found the unopened letter from my mother. The envelope was worn now, edges curled, her handwriting familiar and strange at once. I held it for a long time, debating. Part of me still longed for a miracle, that inside there might be softness, a hint of the mother I used to dream she could be. I opened it. The letter wasn't an apology. It was filled with the same accusations I had already heard: selfish, ungrateful, cold. A demand to remember where you came from. I folded it back into the envelope and placed it in a box with other keepsakes. Not because it held meaning, but because it reminded me of the truth. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from me. That night, I hosted dinner again. This time, it was smaller. Just Nathan, my best friend, and me. We ate, we laughed, we talked about future plans. There was no tension, no fear, just warmth that didn't demand I pay for it with pieces of myself. Looking around the room, I finally understood. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes family is the people who respect your walls and still choose to stay. The ones who don't see boundaries as rejection, but as a map to love you better. The definition of family I grew up with had broken me. The definition I was creating now would heal me, and maybe that's the truest closure of all.